everyone, we're back at it with another tutorial. So today we're talking about our part 2 of the layout editor. Now what I want you guys to gain from this tutorial is obviously I want you to know how to create a basic layout and add apps, but essentially I really want you to understand the apps that we have to offer. I want you to understand the templates underneath those apps. How can you stylize them quickly? How can I add one or multiple apps in a zone? Again, this is going to be sort of a lengthier tutorial, but that's really what I want you guys to gain from watching this. Anyone who knows HTML, anyone who knows some basic CSS, I highly recommend you guys watching the other tutorial, because what we're going to do in that video is we're really going to take a single app and we're going to add some bells and whistles to it using, again, some cool CSS. And so, again, if you know that stuff, I highly recommend it. But again, today in this particular tutorial, we're really going to give you the basic structure of what you need to create a simple and good looking layout. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so obviously the first thing we want to do is we're going to hit the blue button that says create layout. And again, I'm just going to give it a very generic name here. And we'll just keep the 1920 by 1080. As I mentioned, it's a very common size. Of course, if you were using a vertical or a video wall, obviously that might change a little bit. But again, just for this sort of demo tutorial purposes, I'm just going to keep the 1920 by 1080, and then I'm going to hit OK. All right, so as you can see, this is what you're going to see right when you start. Right up here, we obviously have the zoom in and out. We have the horizontal where you can sort of move left or right, vertical obviously up and down, and then I'll talk about the show zone preview in just a sec. Zones, new zones, preview configuration. Again, we'll talk about all that in just a sec. So how this works is I try to break this down into sort of 3 steps. So the first step is you're going to create a zone. The second step is you're going to add a app, or some people call them widgets. And then the third step is stylizing. That's really the sort of the 3 steps in there. Obviously, there are some, things to know within each one, but essentially that's sort of that overview. So what we're going to do is we usually build our layout starting from the background and sort of working our way up. And so with that being said, let's just start with a simple background. So as I mentioned, that first step is creating a zone. And so up here in the top right, we have a button that says New Zone. And I'm going to go ahead and give this zone a name. Now, I personally like to label all my zones exactly the name of, what's going to be displaying in them. So if it's a background, if it's a time and date, a weather, if I'm going to have multiple apps in a zone, maybe I say like social media rotation or advertising rotation. Again, I just try to make my zones just naming the same, which you'll kind of see the reason why. Now, as far as zone size, the width and height, now at this point, because I'm doing a background, I kind of already know this information, right? It's going to be the size of my layout, so 1920 by 1080. Now, for whatever reason, if we were doing the time and the date or a different app, obviously I might not know that width and height, which is totally fine. What you would do at that point, you guys, is you would just enter some sort of, size in here just so the zone can get created. Now, don't worry necessarily about the advanced settings. We're going to skip over that, and then we're just going to hit OK. So as mentioned, 3 steps, right? Create a zone, add a widget, and stylize it. So already the zone has been created. So we're going to jump right into that second step, which is add the widget, or again, app. Whatever terminology you want to use there, app or widget. Here at Reach, we call them apps. All right, so I'm going to double click in here. And then right away, you guys, I'm going to hit add app. And then here is the series of apps that we sort of, provide for you. Again, we'll talk about all this in just a sec as well. So what I'm looking for is sort of a background app or something that says graphic, which is right here, because all of our backgrounds, they're either JPEGs or they're going to be PNG files. Now, questions we get asked, of course, is can you do moving backgrounds? Yes, we can do moving backgrounds. Of course, it depends the type of player you're using, and it also depends on, are you having a hardwire? Are you doing Wi-Fi? There's obviously a couple variations there or questions that we just need to sort of answer before I can say, yes, 100% in your situation, we can do a moving background. But again, we're going to do graphic, and it's, like I said, it needs to be a JPEG or PNG. So I'm going to select graphic app. And then what I always tell our clients is really just kind of start from your left and work your way right. Each app has sometimes more, like a lot of tabs. Some of them only have a couple, as you're seeing right here. It just kind of depends, how much sort of configuration that app might hold. All right, so graphic app, I've selected it. And then we'll come back to the app info in a sec. We're going to jump right into our second one that says graph setting. So what I can do is, again, if you're creating your background and using Adobe products, most people use them, Photoshop or Illustrator. I've had even clients who have created backgrounds in PowerPoint. I mean, that's completely fine. Canva could definitely be another one, right? There's a lot of different sort of softwares out there where you can create your background. And some people, they might just want a simple color. They might want a gradient. They might want some sort of abstract background, right? The possibilities is endless. And that's really up to you. Again, if you're working with our design team as well, obviously that communication will happen. But essentially, you've used some sort of software here, right, to create this JPEG or PNG. And what we want to do is we just want to upload it in here. Now, I can do a simple sort of drag and drop, or I could just click right into here and then sort of my desktop would show up. Now, I just grabbed this image from Google, so nothing too fancy here. As much as I'd like to claim that I created that, I did not. So what we're going to do, you guys, we're going to hit OK. All right, so you're kind of sitting here and being like, all right, well, did the background show up? Did it not? Like, what's going on here? So what we want to do, you guys, is we want to hit this show zone preview, which is then going to render the background that you've submitted. One question I do get asked a lot is, what if I put a background that's bigger or smaller, right, than the 1920 by 1080? So what the zone is going to do, I should say, or the widget, the graphic widget, it's going to try to auto fit it. It's going to do its best to either fit the height or do the width, which means you might have black bars on the top or bottom, or it might get stretched. And so it's really important that we try to create our background, the size of that layout. That way, again, on our digital signage screens, everything is really popping in and looking good. All right, so we've added the background. So that was sort of the whole process there, right? We created the zone, we added the app, and then in this situation, there wasn't much styling that needed to be done. So let's add another widget just so you can understand that styling part. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to New Zone. And this time we'll do time and date. And again, like I mentioned, I'd like to just label my zones as close as possible to what I'm sort of putting in there. And again, as I mentioned, we don't know the size, but I just need to enter something in here just for that zone to sort of get generated or again, created. I don't know why, but I've always done 100, 100. Definitely don't listen to me. You can do whatever size you want. Now, when you create a zone, it's going to come into this sort of top left corner, and you can see I'm trying to sort of, sort of select the zone, right? And so if that situation happens to you, right up here in the top right, we have all the zones that you've ever created. And when you select one, what it does is it brings it to the front, right? It sort of brings it to the front for allowing you to essentially grab it. And as you can see here, I can move it around, right? You can see up in the sort of top here, as I'm moving, the numbers are adjusting. Again, bottom right, it's just a habit for me in the Adobe products to grab from the bottom right, but essentially you can grab anywhere to adjust the height. Now, one thing that is the biggest thing that people miss is that when we are adding sort of, these zones, when we want them to sort of sit on top of the background, we have to change the Z index to 1. So what that means, if I create another sort of zone for weather, it doesn't mean that I need to change my Z index to 2 or 3 or 4. I just need all the apps that I want to sit on the background to be at 1. Because basically, when you get your TV screen and you get a player behind it, the player software needs to render the layout, right? And so it's not that smart to know which one is sitting in the back and which zone is sitting up front, right? It doesn't know that. And so we have to have this Z index in there so that way the player knows, okay, everything in this background zone, it says it's Z index at 0. That means I just need to sit at the bottom. Okay, every app with that Z index at 1, it needs to sort of sit on top. So always make sure that you're changing that Z index to either the 1 or again to a 0. All right, so here you guys, we have our time and date. And again, step 1 is already done, which I've created the zone. Step 2, we're going to add the widget. All right, so again, I'm going to click add widget. And this will take a little bit of time for you to sort of just know, all the widgets, what do they all do? And we'll kind of cover that at the end too, so you feel a little bit more comfortable. And again, we sort of breaking up our apps into, again, all these sort of different sections. But here it is, time and date. So I'll sort of select that. All right, so you can see this one has a little bit more tabs, right? It had 4 tabs. The first one we did only had 2. So as I mentioned, each app is a little bit different because some of them just have a little bit more of, configuration to them. So again, I'm going to skip this for just a sec because we'll definitely, dig into this tab. And so what I'm going to do is just jump right into the second one. All right, so clock type, right? We have digital or we have analog. We'll just do digital today, but know that we do have that other option. And then time zone, we are actually central time, so I'll go ahead and select that. And then we have some preset formats right here. So as you can see in this little blue bar, this is sort of what it's going to look like. All right, a little trick here for you guys. So what you can do is kind of come in here, right, and sort of customize it if you'd like. This is actually pulling from a PHP. So again, we can sort of send you guys a link if you want to, know what format it needs to use to render. Otherwise, just ask us and we can help you out here. But essentially, you could customize your format to sort of fit your needs here. All right, so to me, this looks kind of good. I'm going to kind of stay with this, and then I'll jump right into template. Now, I know that this particular widget only has essentially one template, but just kind of keep in mind that, again, depending on what app you're sort of using, that particular app might have more templates. And we do give you sort of a little thumbnail too, so you can kind of see what, what the template is going to essentially look like. All right, so then the last and final one, which we didn't get to do in the first one, was just sort of stylize it. And so right down here, you guys, they call these selectors. Again, it's going to get a little advanced here, and I'm not going to deep dive into it too much because I really do want to focus on the general use case. But basically, selectors are made up of different classes. So anyone, again, as I talked about earlier, who sort of has a basic knowledge of some HTML and CSS and how that sort of works together, essentially what you could do is you can add your own class into here. And again, that's really going to allow you to sort of take the styling to another level, adding gradients and stuff like that. Again, for anyone who's just a generic user, watching this, don't freak out by it. If you're looking for something, like I just mentioned, like something cool, like a gradient or something like that, reach out to us and let our design team sort of do that for you. So, all right, so let's kind of stylize this. Right up here is sort of, if you're kind of familiar with like Word, Word sort of has that easy sort of select, the editing section, just like that. And so we've kind of sort of mimicked a little bit how they do it, just because they do it such a good job of making it easy. But as you can see, right, I'm just kind of going in here and I'm sort of selecting stuff. And we've got sort of a dark background. So I will do sort of, I guess, a mustard color or gold color. But as you can see, as I'm sort of just selecting these boxes, you're getting a little preview right in front of us. And again, I could do a background color as well, but we'll kind of dig into that sec, of course. But you can simply just sort of stylize it using these simple, boxes up here. All right, so I want to see now what this looks like on the background, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit OK. And then I need to sort of preview this to see what it looks like. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so as you can see, here is my time and date. Now at this point, of course, I can kind of go back and forth here, making, some color changes or making the font bigger, smaller. But essentially that's kind of what you would do as far as those steps, right? Create a zone, add the app, and then stylize it. Now, the only thing I'm going to sort of switch gears here a little bit is, what if you want to add a background to this, right? A background color, it could be an image as well. Well, there's really two ways to do this. So first off, you can add the background to the app, or you can add it to the zone. And it just kind of depends what you're looking to do. So hopefully, to kind of better explain this, is if I add it to the zone, I mean, look how big this zone is. It's pretty big, right? It's pretty aggressive. Let's just say I want this zone to be white, just to kind of keep it simple here. Well, this whole zone that you're seeing is going to be white, and it's going to take up a lot of space. And so, of course, again, right, I can kind of make this smaller. I can maybe tuck it up into the left corner a little bit, and that would help, of course. But again, it just kind of depends what you're looking to do. Otherwise, like I said, the other option is just to put the background color on the app. And so we'll do both steps together so that way you can sort of see the difference. So if I'm going to put the background color on the app, what I'm going to do is just double click in here. I'm going to go back to style. And then there's a button right here that says background color. And then from there, I can make my adjustments. So I'll just kind of do something a little bit darker than the sort of the gold or mustard color I had. Okay, so I'll kind of choose this sort of burnt orange, and then I'm going to hit OK. Now, before I preview this, I'm just going to show you how to add the background color to the zone so you can sort of see the difference. All right, so to make any changes into the zone, the settings, now we're going to sort of tackle these icons that you see. Again, as I am moving my mouse, they sort of appear. All right, so we have a copy feature, which is great when you're dealing with multiple layouts. And let's just say you're in here and you're creating this widget and you're like, holy cow, this is awesome. Like, look at this cool widget I created. And you have other layouts. Well, why don't we just copy that and paste it in those layouts just to save you some time? Settings, that's actually where we're going to dig into, so I'm going to skip over it. The third one is the edit tool. So again, that pops up this modal. I've been double clicking through this tutorial. So again, either option is completely fine. And then you can obviously, the X meaning delete, remove this, get rid of it. And then this little guy, it's a little hard to see, but there's a checkbox. This actually locks the zone. So this comes in handy when you are obviously, right, you've got multiple zones here, you're going to town, you're crazy, you've just got your design hat on. You might want to lock them because as you can see, we don't have an undo. And so you just might want to lock these zones. That way you're not sort of bumping them and moving them accidentally. All right, so let's go into the zone setting, which again is this gear icon. And then now we've got this sort of pop up here. So basic information that you and I filled out in the beginning, and we'll talk about this stuff in a sec, so I'm just going to skip over it. Event tab, again, I'm going to jump over this one as well because I just really want to focus on this background of the zone. All right, so background color, again, I can type in some simple rainbow colors, blue, green, red, orange, right? Or I can type in my hex color here. Again, I can also even drag an image in here as well. And then just so you know, style tab, that's anyone, anyone who knows some CSS. Just to give you a quick scenario on this one, let's just say you wanted the zone to have a gradient background. This is where you do your CSS and the entire zone would have like a gradient background or a stroke or a drop shadow. Again, all in that other tutorial there, but I just want to let you know what that's for. All right, so let's hit OK and then let's preview this. All right, so as you can see, there's the difference, right? So the zone, right? It's the zone, the background color of the zone is blue. And then we've got this sort of burnt orange I put on the app. So again, it just kind of depends what you're looking to do. It's hard to give you a clear direction, like, no, in this situation, put in the zone, or in this situation, put in the app. So it just kind of depends what you're looking to establish, but no, there's two areas to add a background color. And then also too, the reason why this is collapsed is just because my font is a little bit bigger than maybe what my zone can sort of hold, right? And so it's automatically sort of dropping down to this other line. If I wanted this all on one perfect line, what I would either do is either make the font smaller or I would just easily increase the zone width. So two options there. All right, so let's kind of jump into some more functionality, of course. So again, I'm just going to jump back into here. All right, so when you create a zone, obviously you can add multiple apps, right? You're not just limited to have just, okay, only this zone can have, time and date. You can have as many apps in a zone. And that's kind of where we come into this timeline. Now, the timeline has three different setups, which we're going to dig into. So what I'm going to do, you guys, I'm just going to add some simple apps here just to kind of, explain some more functionality. All right. All right, so you might be asking yourself too, like, well, give me a scenario of when I would use multiple apps, right? So where I commonly see it is social media. Some people have like a designated zone, and then they'll have their Facebook and their Twitter and their Instagram kind of all sort of cycling through one zone. That's kind of the more common scenario. But of course, you could have a playlist and then some quotes and then maybe sports scores. I mean, the possibility or really the customization is really endless. It's really up to you. So when we're dealing with multiple apps, that kind of adds more features, right? More capabilities here. The first thing is you can obviously label them. And so that might be important to you, depending on, again, how many apps you have in here, Michelle's title, social media, right? That's kind of, maybe you want to be a little bit more detailed, but Facebook. Again, it's just sort of helping you, when you come in here, you know exactly what the app is pulling. That way you don't have to click in here and kind of, figure out what's going on. So again, that's sort of the name conventioning. Again, you can change the order to, again, if you want. We'll kind of dig into the stuff in just a sec, and then we'll just kind of dabble right here into the type. So as a default, you are going to be set to a loop base, and I'm not going to grind down on the timeline. if you're really interested in this, obviously give us a call and we'll explain this, way more detail. We have a lot of documentation on this, but for this tutorial, I still want to keep this sort of simple and kind of keep it moving. So when we talk about sort of this timeline, right, we've got three of them. We've got loop-based, time, and linear. As a default, you're going to be on loop-based. Think of loop-based as like a shuffle format. Maybe it'll show the time, maybe it'll show a Facebook, maybe it'll show a quote, right? It's just doing its own thing basically. Like you're not controlling essentially what's running. It's just like at its own little shuffle. The second one is time-based, and this is where you can say, no, I don't like the shuffle, Michelle. I want my time and date to run for 2 minutes. And then after 2 minutes, I want this label to show for 10 seconds. And then I want my Facebook to show for 5 minutes, right? Time is telling exactly how long the app can run. The last and final one then is this linear one. Linear is the opposite. It's how many assets or slides. I'm trying to think of other words here. Maybe how much content you want to run for each app. So again, I'll explain this a little bit better here. Time and date, it's not really going to have slots. It's just going to have the one, so it's going to show time and date. Michelle's title, that's a label. Again, that's going to show one. I kind of did some bad little suggestions here. Let me grab another widget so I can explain this better to you. Okay, so when we're talking about linear and I'm talking about these slots and content, I'm like basically confusing you. Okay, when we're dealing with Facebook, playlists, and quotes, this is a good example. When it hits Facebook, how many posts do you want it to show before it goes to the next app? Maybe you say, okay, you know what? I want the 5 most recent posts. After the 5 most recent posts, I want to go to my playlist. Okay, same question to you. How many assets do you want to run before it goes to the quotes? Well, you say, okay, Michelle, I want the first 10 assets to play in order. Okay, then you select, obviously in here, you would select 10. And then again, the quote app, sorry, I have to go to the second one here. You go to the quote app and you say, okay, well, how many quotes do you want to show before it can go back to time and date? So linear is telling, again, the widget how many, and I said slides, I said posts, assets. It just depends what widget you're grabbing, but you're basically telling the widget how many, again, I called it slots as well, it can play before it jumps to the next one. So if you're like, hey, you know what, I need a little bit more documentation on that. I'm not fully understanding it. Again, just give us a call, email us, and we'll kind of explain that a little bit more in detail. But know that you have those options, right? You have those options of how you want your zone to play your apps, and that's going to be right here. Now, again, depending on your selection here, this content duration and saturation is going to adjust. And that will be sort of hard to explain in this quick sort of tutorial, only because it does depend which one you're selecting. So I encourage you guys just at that point to call us, email us, and we can sort of, again, tell you a little bit more about this. All right, so override is when, and again, we have these sort of little tooltips as well. So override will only play one app with content or exclude with no content. So what that means, and again, good example of this is a playlist, right? A playlist has multiple assets in it. Well, let's just say you don't have anything in it. Well, let's turn override on it, meaning that when the playlist is supposed to run, let's skip it. And then we'll just kind of continue on with all these other apps because you don't have any content in it. Repellent basically avoids, basic 2 apps from playing back to back. So, good example of that one is social media, right? You might have 2 social media widgets in here. Let's say one is Facebook and one is Instagram. Maybe you don't want these 2 widgets to play back to back. You want some sort of in-between assets. So what you would do is you would turn repellent on both of these. That way they don't, social media in general is just not hitting back to back, regardless of your loop time here, or your loop type, sorry. Filler, right? So filler has to do with time. So every timeline as a default has 60 seconds. And as you can see, I've succeeded now, right? I'm at 60 seconds over 60 seconds. I can't add another widget at this point, right? I need more time. And so how I can do that is I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go back into seconds here, or the settings, and I'm going to change this to 120. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to go back. All right, so you can see that everything has adjusted here. So I can now add more widgets. But what you might want to say is, hey, you know what? I'm using 60 seconds out of 120 seconds. You know what? I just want my quotes to just take the remaining time. You don't have to do the math or anything like that. I just want it to take the remaining time. And so, what this is going to look like, you guys, is basically, again, depending on whatever loop time you've got here, it's going to play these apps, but the famous quote is going to be the most dominant because it has the most sort of time. Again, that's not going to sort of accommodate if you've got time based or linear, but this loop one, where it's just that shuffle that we talked about, that's where this would sort of come into play. All right, and disabled, that's just disabling the widget entirely. So that kind of comes up where some people, again, you're stylizing this Instagram and you're like, you know what, we're just not using it right now. I just want to disable it. I don't want to delete it. I don't want to have to like redesign my Instagram or like reconfigure it. I just want to disable it for now. And so that's kind of a common feature that you'll see on the app page. All right, so that's kind of the basic overview of, how our widgets work. Again, know that each widget's a little bit different, of course, as far as the configuration, but just remember that three-step process, right? I create a zone, I'm adding an app, and then I'm stylizing. As long as you can sort of understand those three, you'll be just fine. So let's kind of talk about the apps in general, just so you have an understanding of what they do. All right, so the calendar app is obviously going to pull from our calendar application on the left side here. That's going to pull information that either we're integrating from. So calendar is right, like upcoming events, schedule information. We could pull from, like Google Calendar or Outlook, EMS. I'm just kind of naming some ones that everyone's kind of familiar with, or you can manually enter your events in. Counter, of course, right? A counter going up, counter going down. Custom HTML, that might come in handy. Where I've seen some custom HTML, of course, is sometimes with YouTube, if you're trying to stream an entire playlist or pull entire playlists, sometimes we can't just get a basic URL. And so it requires some custom HTML to pull in. And so, again, that might be a widget that we have to use. Graphic, you and I covered in the beginning, right? We used that for our background. Again, iframe. Again, another example, maybe you want to iframe your website in, or again, I kind of just mentioned that YouTube, sometimes YouTube, if you want to share just one video. Obviously, our media library holds videos, but again, if there was something in YouTube you wanted to iframe, you could do that as well. Label is just a label, like a heading or a title. So on your layout, maybe you have the schedule, and then on top you want to say, upcoming events for today. That would be sort of why you would use a label. News stories, that's content information, right? So content information like news, like CNN, Fox News, trying to think of New York Times, right? Or even ESPN. There's some other ones in there. This would just be sort of news content that can cycle through, and it automatically updates too. So less work on essentially your end. Playlists, again, that's going to come from our application called the playlist. And again, if you're not that far into the Reach system, you're still learning it. Playlist is basically pulling assets from your media library. So content, right? Those JPEGs, those PDFs, those PowerPoints, videos, stuff like that. Quotes is an automatic, again, an automatic pull where you can pull famous quotes, movie quotes. Again, who doesn't sort of like seeing quotes when they sort of walk through? Sports scores, again, the latest and greatest of NFL or baseball or hockey. So again, you can sort of display some sports scores. We sort of already talked about social media a little bit there, but know that you can pull Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. A ticker, usually a ticker scrolls across the bottom, or maybe it's static. Again, a lot of people use ticker. They can manually enter their own information in, or again, they might sort of use some news content to cycle through down there. Stock apps or stock information. Apologize. Again, maybe some ESPN or today's local news. Time and date, you and I covered, of course. Weather, we didn't, but know that you can display your local weather. Graphs and forms. So list widget, or list app, sorry, comes from our data list in our data list application. Data list is basically it's like an Excel file. It's kind of like tabular data. There are integrations you can do in the data list as well. Otherwise, you can just you can create some a data list for upcoming birthdays or anniversaries, information, job postings. Data list can get used for menu boards as well. So that might be something where you would use this app for. Power BI. So if you have a Power BI account, you want to pull in your dashboard or your reports. Again, this one would be a good one where you can just sort of add some configuration and then you can pull those directly in. Video streaming, of course, right? So video streaming, again, we kind of mentioned it already. YouTube obviously is a popular one. If you have WebEx or if you have Zoom you want to pull from, again, here's some others types of stream types that we can pull directly from. All right, we'll kind of go back here and then a couple more. So premium, of course, if you go in here, you're going to see sort of a locked icon. This does require a little bit of additional cost. iFrame Premium, so what that is sometimes people have websites, and I'll just kind of use like a corporation as an example where they might have some, reports that they want to show or some dashboard information, but to get through that I'll say that website is a username and password. And so sometimes when we have to deal with something like that, there's a little bit of a custom work for the developer to kind of get through that username and password to display that information. Maps is just Google Maps. How's the traffic for today, stuff like that. So this one's kind of cool because you can select a particular like suburb or like a small little town, or you can kind of, zoom in and out and sort of showcase, maybe a bigger region. And then weather radar, again, same thing. This one's also nice too, is where you can zoom in on a particular country or zone or region, or you can even have, the entire United States if you really wanted to. But again, the weather radar as well. So that's sort of a basic idea of what the apps are, how they work. Again, if you're interested in more of the apps, you can definitely jump on our website. And right down here, we've got just a list of all the apps. Again, I covered maybe only just a little bit, of course. But again, you can check out our website to see what we truly have to offer. So that's the overview of the layout editor. There is a lot to learn, of course. So, if you really want to learn this, definitely set up some training with us. We're not going to charge you for that. My thing is just slowly kind of dig into this. It does take a little bit to learn, but it is doable, of course. So again, watch that other tutorial if you do know like just basic knowledge of some HTML structure, a little bit of some CSS. Again, that tutorial is really going to take a simple app like this time and date and sort of add some bells and whistles using some CSS. So with that being said, you guys, I hope you guys have a great day. And again, any questions you have, feel free to call or email us. Thank you.